So I'm going to begin by just doing a light sketch in graphite. At this point, your main goal is to just focus on proportion. So that principle of design that deals with the sizing of objects in relation to one another, that's going to be a primary expectation with any still life. It's really a study of objects in relation to each other. And don't focus on too many fine details. Your main goal at this point is to just block in some general shapes, general divisions of objects. At this point, I'm starting to lay in watercolor. First, I lay down a layer of plain water, and then I go back in with pigment and begin to spread the pigment around with a plain brush. So adding that first layer of pigment and then going back in and spreading it out. At this point, I'm just testing my analogous color scheme. Now I'm going in with a dry brush technique, so using a lot of pigment and very little water to get a very opaque, very strong, defined color. After I lay down some pigment, I go back in with a clean brush and thin the pigment out to get a little gradient. So anytime you want to get fine details, something with a very strong hard edge, you're going to want to use that dry brush technique where you load up the brush with a lot of pigment and very little water. Just enough water to spread the pigment around. You can see I'm leaving blank gaps in the leaves. I'm going to go back in and do a thin wash of yellow-green in just a second. So now I'm mixing my yellow-green, seeing different color combinations of what's going to give me the look I want. So now I'm going in with a technique of just a flat wash. So just laying down an even, flat color, letting it dry. And then I go back in with another dry brush technique to get some of the finer details, focusing on hard edges or straight lines. At this point, I'm now again focusing on flat washes using cerulean blue. I'm removing pigment when I go a little too far to get that look of gradation or form. You want to really think about your value scale again, so those lights versus darks. For watercolor, whenever you want to get a light tone, it's going to be the white of the paper itself that's going to act as a highlight. So sometimes when you add too much pigment, you'll need to remove some with a little bit of plain water in your brush. So I'm really switching between dry brush and flat washes. With soft edges, you really want to go slow. You can see as I build up the sense of roundness in the head, I'm really slowly applying pigment. I don't really want a hard edge on the head of the stuffed animal, so I apply a little bit of pigment and then quickly thin it out with water. The small dice form just requires me to lay down some flat washes, avoiding the white dots of the dice. So remember again that it's going to be the paper itself that acts as a highlight. You can see I apply just a little bit of pigment and then I thin it out with just plain water. So for shadows, I really went heavy-handed with the pigment. So going back in and layering is something you're going to want to do once you reach your final stage of your watercolors. Laying in some more flat washes, playing with the pigments. I then lay in a mixture of green and yellow as my flat wash for my tabletop surface. And now I'm just focusing in on my cast shadows.